Forgive our sin and raise us to a life that will reflect your glory. Begin a life in us that will serve you and our brothers and sisters until when we die. Earn the joy of your heavenly presence through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. This statement is completely reliable and should be universally accepted. Christ Jesus entered our world to rescue sinners. He personally bore our sins in his body on the cross. So might be dead to sin and alive to all that is good. Friends, believe the good news of the gospel. In Jesus Christ, we are forgiven. Amen. Please stand if you're able for our hymn, Amazing Grace.
My name is Allie, and I'm George and Mary's 10th of their 11 grandchildren. I'll be reading from the Old Testament this morning. Psalm 23, verse 4. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow's death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Psalm 73, verses 25 through 26. Whom have I in heaven but you, and there is nothing on earth that I desire besides you. My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever.
Good morning. I'm Marcia. I am George and Mary's oldest daughter, and you probably already know that I was the favorite. I'm reading from Philippians 4, verses 8 and 9. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report. If there be any virtue and there be any praise, think on these things. Those things which ye have both learned and received and heard and seen in me, do, and the God of peace shall be with you. And then I'm going to read from 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 6 through 8. For I am now ready to be offered, and the time of my departure is at hand. I have fought a good fight. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give me at that day, and not to me only, but unto all them also that love his appearing.
Please stand for our next hymn if you're able.
And the credit for George's extended life of 88 years goes to you, Mary. Every neighbor in Mary's cul-de-sac watched her drive in and out several times a day, taking Dad to doctor's appointments, physical therapy, dialysis, picking up medications, and going to church. Mary's life was taking care of Dad 24/7, a job that was made easy by George's constant appreciation. He never complained, and he thanked her every day for taking care of him. Mom, you have been his everything every day for a long time, so I want to thank you for your love for him and your devotion to him that enabled all of us that know him and love him to enjoy the gift of his company these last years. Your dedication to George is what a wonderful marriage is all about. For better, for worse, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. The insert in today's bulletin gives a synopsis of George's life. An educator adored by his students, and hardworking father of 4 who subsidized a teacher's salary by driving a Greyhound bus during the summer months. My wife and his youngest daughter, Kathy, followed in her dad's footsteps by also becoming a teacher. The professional advice George gave her was simple. Work your butt off and do your best. Treat each student equally. Don't have favorites, and come home every day knowing you touched a child's life in a positive way. Kathy grew up in a home where acceptance of all God's children was shown, and the act of kindness went a long way. One of her favorite memories of her dad's kindness was when he took out his snowblower after a snowstorm and cleared a 2-block path so she didn't have to wear boots when she walked to school. I married Kathy in 1978 and immediately reaped the benefits of not only his kindness, but his unique sense of humor. Several days into our honeymoon, I received this telegram. It's addressed to Richard Thurwachter, Grand Bahamas Hotel, Freeport, Bahamas. Rick, return daughter. Etiquette telegram never received. Signed, George. Well, I realized I had forgot to thank him for the wedding, so I immediately sent a telegram back that said, deepest apologies for a wonderful wedding and reception. Daughter stays. And he has been dad ever since. I learned very quickly that the great joy in his life was his family. His wife, Mary, their 4 children, Al, Marcia, Kathy, Tom, and their spouses, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren that arrived with regularity through the years. I know it was George's family and his intense desire to share life with them that fueled his incredible motivation to fight so hard for life every single day. I am blessed to have shared George's company on countless occasions. He was an intelligent, thoughtful, caring, kind, and extremely generous man with the best sense of humor of anyone I have ever known. There wasn't a joke that did not make him laugh with gusto, or a funny story he was not eager to share. There wasn't a person that knew him that didn't like him. There isn't a man I know that loved his family more. I never thought of him as my father-in-law. I never addressed him as George. To me, he was always just Dad. And I love him, and I'm going to miss him.
Hello, I'm Mike, one of George's son-in-laws. I married Marcia, the favorite. I've been told I met George in high school. He was a teacher, I a student. I don't remember the occasion or the circumstances of that meeting. But my first real encounter with George was in 1969, a memory very vivid. I had just started to date his daughter, Marcia. She and I were watching TV in the family room, and as usual, it was getting late. George must have been driving the extra board for the Greyhound bus and had gotten up to get dressed. The house was quiet. Suddenly, a deep, bellowing voice shattered the silence. "Marcia, go to bed. Mike is leaving now." En route to the front door, I had to pass the dimly lit hallway leading to the bedrooms. I looked down the hall. There he was, a towering man, square-jawed, chiseled nose, piercing eyes, and sporting a crew cut. He was attired in his white boxer shorts and a sleeveless t-shirt. He glared into my eyes and said, "Good night." I don't remember if I answered it as I scurried out the door. But in this brief encounter, he had certainly commanded my attention. It's been over 50 years since that memorable encounter, and what a privilege to have known and learned from George all those years. What an honor to be part of his family. As you know, George was a man's man. He had physical presence, but more so, he possessed the highest character and values. He was a man of integrity. His yes was his yes. His no was his no. You trusted George. George always had your back. He was a man with moral courage. He taught us what was right, and he certainly corrected us when we were wrong. He practiced what was right. As you say, he walked the talk. He stood against injustice and always looked after the underdog. As we saw earlier, George was a patriot. He always was intrigued with his immigrant heritage, but he loved our country. He served in the U.S. Army and was a veteran of the Korean War. He would proudly work stories of his own son, Alan's service in the Air Force into most conversations. He always had encouraging words for me and Marcia during my years as a Navy officer. He enjoyed a parade, a carnival, a brat with an ear of corn hot off the grill, and fireworks on the 4th of July. George embraced the freedoms and opportunities inherent in our country, and he taught us we could achieve anything if we were willing to dedicate ourselves and work hard for it. He was proud to be an American. George was a man of faith. He cared about people, drawing the best out of them. He was generous. He was optimistic. He attended and supported his churches. He prayed, and yes, George was a believer. However, the most undeniable and inspiring character trait was George's everlasting love of and dedication to his family. The gruffy old bear was a teddy bear when it came to family. The gleam in his eye, the joy in his heart, and the tenderness of his voice during a family gathering was transformational. He would occasionally ask me how things were going with my family, but the conversation would always get around to how proud he was of all his children and the great job we were all doing in managing our households, raising our kids, and respecting our marriages. The grandchildren and great-grandchildren were his life. He delighted in being their grandpa, or Beepa. And Mary, this past Thanksgiving, I sat with George, and he told me, he said, "Mike, I couldn't do anything if it wasn't for the support and love of Mary." So, George, we thank you for your guidance, for setting the bar high, for creating all the family traditions, especially Thanksgiving dinners and our nights at Aurelio's. Now, George wasn't a saint. He liked to drive fast, a habit Tom and Marcia emulate. He'd say, "Keep it moving. Have one tire on the pavement during snow. Now kick it." I'm sure it was practices left over from his Greyhound bus driving days. He watched MSNBC's Rachel Maddow instead of Fox's Sean Hannity. He was a union guy, a huge supporter of the Illinois Retired Teachers Association. I thought he leaned Democratic. He drank Dunkin' Donut coffee instead of Starbucks. He'd have a cold Coors Light over a fine wine. And as we all know, George was known to use colorful language. He also had a few idiosyncrasies. For 80 plus years, one haircut, crew cut with a flat top. It was dubbed the Beep-a-Buzz. He had his black horn-rimmed glasses to help him read. I didn't see him frequently, but when I did, he wore a plaid shirt, khaki pants, brown shoes, and an unzipped jacket. He always carried a pen. Usually had a handkerchief folded in his pocket. He liked novelty gadgets. He once had a pen that took video, a spy cam he called it. He took video of people on an airplane. We thought he'd get arrested. And then there was his chair in front of the TV. George's chair. As long as I knew George, he had a chair, his chair, an oversized lounge chair. It always faced the TV. In the evenings when George was working, or any time when he was retired, if you found the chair, you found George. The grandkids named it the Beep-a-Chair. No one sat in George's chair. In fact, my introduction to the chair was in George's Illinois home. Now, imagine a family room about 10 by 10. It contained a sofa, an end table, a lamp on the end table, a big coffee table in front, a game table across the room with 3 chairs, a round back hard chair, wall shelving, a wall space heater, a bench seat in front of a fireplace, wooden magazine rack, and it had 5 full-size doors opening into it or out of it. And in the center, right in the center, was George's chair. One could hardly breathe in this room, let walk around. But this chair was George's refuge, and it was complete with 4 items: the remote, a channel guide, a newspaper, and a recent news magazine. He'd take his sandwich or drink a beer in that chair. He'd also bellow directions to the grandkids from that chair. Usually, "Don't stand in front of the TV." You didn't sit in the chair, and you didn't take any of the 4 items, and you didn't stand in front of the TV. Those were his rules. From evening news through the Letterman show, George was in that chair. Now, to me, the chair also has some very good historical value. It was Christmas Eve, 1973. I entered the family room and approached the chair. Waiting for a commercial break, I stood before the chair. But before I could speak, George, without even looking up, murmured, "Yeah?" I could hardly speak. Nervously, I said, "I'd like to have your permission to ask Marcia to marry me." Still, without looking up, he voiced in his deep bass tone, "What the hell? Why not?" That evening, Marcia accepted my proposal. A Beep-a chair became a requirement at all our homes. Tom had one in his living room, I found out Kathy had one in their bedroom. Marcia and I always had to find out or figure out where George was going to sit. Time after time, we had to reconfigure our family rooms, moving a recliner in just for him. Those chairs will be empty now. I'm sure the Lord has set aside a quiet place for George to rest. So to George, or Dad, or Beepa, we love you. We miss you. We will always hold dear our memories of you. May you rest in peace, and we pray that no one in heaven is sitting in your new chair.
I'm using technology instead of paper like my dad. Hi, I'm Justin. I'm the son of Marcia and Mike Stichter and George's eldest grandson. And I think I actually am the favorite. So you heard my dad refer to George, my grandfather, as Beepa, and that's what my siblings and I endearingly called him. I think we can blame my older sister, who lives in Europe and couldn't be here today, for this surname. Apparently Grandpa was too hard for her to say, but either way, it stuck. Certainly, like all of you, I've been reflecting on Beepa's life these last few days specifically. And truly, with a man of 88 years, there are countless stories and anecdotes to choose from. Beepa wore a lot of hats throughout the years, from a teacher to a soldier, from a bus driver to a bowler, from a brother, a friend, a father, a husband, a grandfather, a great-grandfather. He certainly accomplished a lot in his life. But as I look back, I really wanted to honor his life by speaking perhaps to his greatest accomplishment. One that took a lifetime of faith, intentionality, and love. I want to speak about his legacy. We are all part of someone's legacy, whether we want to be or not. Sometimes legacies are good, sometimes legacies are less than good. Some are founded on fragile soil, sifting sand, while others can stand the test of time, being built on the cornerstone of faith and love. Well, this is the legacy of Beepa, my grandfather, George Laipple. After the death of his first wife, Beepa remarried Mary, or as we call her, Bima. Apparently Grandma was too hard for my sister to say too. And with that marriage, 2 broken families were now restored. Certainly restored by God, but also restored through the obedient and loving act of a man who not only opened his heart to a woman he faithfully loved for 60 years, but also to 2 daughters that became his own, my mom, Marcia, and my Aunt Kathy. And likewise, Bima lovingly took in George's son,